Alrighty. Welcome to Millerman training on video. Hey, technology. Gotta love it. All right. For those of you who do know me or do not know me, either way, hi, this is Jeff in case you don't know me. And I tend to talk fast. I work fast. I think fast. You probably understand that. The great thing about video or a recording is that you can go back. Of course, you can always get in touch with me one way or another. Email Jeff, GEOF, at worldstage.com. I'm, usually found on show site and stuff, and I can help you with any of the specifics if things are not clear here in this recording. I would suggest that you go to millumin.com and download both versions, version 1 and version 2. The free trial is fully functional. After 30 days, I'll show you what it does, but it's still functional. And practice with it on your own. Practice doing the things that I show you before you end up on show site. And also take advantage of the EICs when you set up with the specifics about the hardware. I'm going to go and start up Millumin 1, which is the version I am recommending for the time being, mainly because, while Millumin 2 works well, there are a couple of things about it that are different, mainly relating to time, and I find that version 1 is best for people to start with. You can always go to version 2. On almost all of our systems, there should be both. If you only find version 2, the authorization is good for version 1 either way, and you can simply drop it onto the computer, have your EIC, type in passwords so you can install it and put in version 1. Okay, I've started up version 1. You can see here trial version is expired. This will still work. That is why, however, there is a crosshatch here, because that's what it does. It puts that up on the output as well as on your local monitor when the trial is expired. So you will, if you see that, you need to make sure that the system you are on is authorized because something has gone wrong. For these purposes, you will see this, and that's quite all right. So we open it up. I usually spread things out. I like to see things really big and all that. Over here on the left, you expand the panel for your sources. This is your library. You drag and drop files into there. You can also drag and drop them into columns, or even, I believe, into the preview window. Down here on the lower right is the time panel. This is where you will click the gear and make sure you're set up for time remaining. At least that's the way I do it, so you can do countdowns. Live preview, if this is selected, will give you a live preview in the time panel, which is not necessary, and it just adds computer overhead, but you can do it. I will tell you that the systems that you get hardware-wise will either be Mac Pro towers, possibly iMacs, possibly laptops. All of them are going to essentially work the same, and you will have external hard drives and external audio interfaces. Audio interface will usually be a Motu. External hard drives will usually be Thunderbolt. If that is not what you get when you see a system, talk with your PM and your EIC and make sure that you've gotten the right stuff. I will not be going over hardware anymore, as that gets into a lot of specifics up to a couple of things, because you set audio settings at the system level, along with a couple of things related to monitors. But right now, this is basic 16:9 single output playback. I'm not going to go into the media server functions of the software, as it has a great deal of them. It's not appropriate for this particular training. So now here is your interface. What they call the dashboard. This is where your clips play. Each column, if a column is played, if there was a video there, and anything in any layer will all play at the same time. So you drop in a cue into one column, and then a cue into another column, and a cue into another column, and that's how you run your show. Time panel will show you countdowns, and you can click around in the time panel. It does not actively scrub. I'll show you that later. Your library, where your sources mean, that's your video clips you've dropped in. Inputs, FaceTime camera, you will not be using that, but it will take live inputs. That's one of the media server things it can do. And then over here, all of your parameters for various things. You've got your layer parameters. This means anything set here affects every clip on said layer. Effects and audio. And then when we drop a clip in, there will be a media parameters. The media parameters apply to each individual clip wherever they may be. When you start up, there are a few things to set. You have preferences. Global frame rate will usually be 60. Anti-aliasing, you can start with it off. It adds overhead you probably won't need. You will always want to be in 64-bit mode. We send out only 64-bit systems. If you have a 32-bit system, that's probably a problem that will need to be investigated. Output in all spaces needs to be on. That means that it outputs to external displays and things. Hide OS 10 menu bar. The manufacturers tell me not to do this at this level because it adds overhead, and that turns off the menu bar in external outputs. The way to do that properly is to go to System Preferences, Mission Control, and turn off Displays Have Separate Spaces. That should be done on any graphics or playback computer. When it is done, after it is set, you will then have to log out and log back in. And the system will tell you that because it's a kind of a global thing. So that's where you would set that preference. You would not use this Hide OS 10 menu bar in the preferences. Workspace, default res. Usually it's going to be 1920 1080. Your board, dashboard preferences. I like large rows and columns. You can make that stuff smaller if you like. As you can see, when I change those, it changes live. I like large things. That's the way I view it. It's strictly up to you. Other settings, go on to next board. You can leave that. Show column index, I like. You see numbers. Sort of works like Q numbers in QLab to me. I like to have that on. Show layer index. You can turn that off or on. It puts a number on the layer. Doesn't really matter. Loop the media by default. Because this product was created by DJ lighting type people, everything to them normally loops. You turn that off because rarely are you going to loop every clip that comes in. And you can set a default transition time here as well if you like to. You probably won't be using a lot of transitions on basic playback, but there is a setting for that. Composition relates to this composition button here. Won't really be anything that you will be using. You don't need to worry about updates, although you can check as of this recording. 1.68 is the latest version for version 1. And activation, it should be activated when you get it. That's about all you need for preferences. One important thing on the main interface, full screen. Watch when I click this, full screen. Now all of a sudden, because I don't have an external display, my local display is the default output. And when you go and turn full screen on, boom, there it goes. Apple or Command F will toggle that on and off. There is also a menu command for full screen in the menu. If you think you are playing back and you see video playing back in this window and screen switchers tell you, I only see a desktop, it says playback prime or something like that, or I'm not getting video, make sure that full screen is toggled on. And there are 2 or 3 places where that can be done, but that's usually what has happened is somehow full screen has gotten toggled off. I can't in this instance show you, but when you toggle it in Actually, I might be able to set up siphon as an output, but when you toggle this here, it changes the direction of the arrows. So you can tell visually whether you are set full screen here when this is toggled. But the obvious way is to also have somebody who's looking at the output tell you. So you've opened up, set up your UI, set up your preferences, and now we set up our outputs. In all likelihood, you're 1920 1080. If you know you are using 720p, you can set 1280 720 as a custom. If you're using, excuse me, if you're using other things like triple heads, which in all likelihood you would be doing much more advanced things than you would know. So data path triple head, you can set 3840 by 1080. You can set custom for 4K. You can do all kinds of things. Right now, we're going to say 1920 1080. See this show test card here. When I click that, and then we look back here, we have a test pattern. If I go full screen, you will see there is a test pattern. It shows you the number of the display output if you have multiple displays, as well as the res at which that display is set. And then you can make sure that you you can make sure screen switching is going edge to edge, and you're getting everything, and there's no funny scaling or anything like that. All right, so back to output. Show test card will turn that off. You can also show test card here. Another troubleshooting thing is show frames per second. You probably won't need that, but when you turn that on, during playback, it'll show you frames per second that it's achieving here. If that number on a 60-frame playback is, say, only 29, then you have issues and you may be losing frames or stuttering, and there's things to look at. But you don't need to leave that on. Back at our outputs. Okay, so we've got our output res. Multi-screen, if you were using a data path or something like that, you might, well, no, a data path, it would be seeing it as one screen. If you were using direct outputs from a Mac tower and, say, using two active mini DisplayPort to DVI adapters, perhaps, to do discrete screens, directly out of a Mac tower, you could say two screens, and then you could set up those outputs as well as your output sizing and stuff. And there's even a little note here about if you're using Matrox, which it understands using Matrox or data paths. But those would be single outputs because you'd be doing a single output at, say, 3840 by 1080. Or if you were doing a single 4K pixel space that you set custom to 3840 by 2160, that would be a single output to a data path, which would then break it up into the four outputs. So you most likely you're doing a single 16:9, you're leaving that on a single output. You're not doing soft edges. I strongly suggest not doing color correction or gamma, which you can do here in the app. Most likely you're going to a device like an iPro or something that will have some color handles. If you do need to do matching, you can do that here, but probably you would not be. The last thing to know is if you have two systems, a prime and a backup, and the colors are radically different coming out of them, it's entirely possible somebody's done a custom color profile on one of the computers. Back in System Preferences, we look at Displays, and in Displays, we look at Color, and we look at our color profiles. You can see on my laptop, I've done a custom calibration for my laptop. If you see custom calibrations, you might see something that says URS routing switcher, which is actually how an X20 looks to a computer. You might see FRS or Folsom or iPro or something like that. Or you may see any one of a number of custom profiles. To get away from that, just choose Adobe RGB on all of the systems. That should normalize them, and the colors should be darn close, if not matching. I would suggest not doing custom calibrations unless you really need to. That's extremely advanced stuff, and you can whack yourself way out into places that you don't want to be. So in all likelihood, you won't be doing that. But when you see one display look way, way warmer or way, way bluer than another, and something obviously looks wrong, it's entirely possible a custom display calibration has been done. Okay, we get away from that. Lastly, transform. These position and cornering functions are media server functions which you will not use unless you're doing extremely advanced things. So we've set up our output. We have the size of our pixel space and the display to which we are going. If I had an external display, I would be able to select it here, whether that be something that might say Folsom, or it might say data path, or it might say HP 2311, or who knows, depending on what the EDID is for the display that is hooked up externally. Okay, now we're set up and we're ready to start bringing in our media. You're going to have an external hard drive. I don't. I'm just going to go to my local movies folder. If you don't already know this, WorldStage's standard format for playback is ProRes 422, not ProRes HQ, not ProRes LT, not ProRes 4444, ProRes 422. Any deviation from there could cause frames to be dropped or other bad things to happen to video. You may in fact be given H.264s. You may be given horrible rips from YouTube. Yes, we understand that. These may play. I will show you stuff that are H.264 that I have on my computer which will play, and if they play fine, that's fine. All of our systems have at least QuickTime Pro, if not an app called Switch, both of which will do transcoding to ProRes 422. The first thing to do when things are not playing correctly and they are not ProRes is to transcode them to ProRes. That's your first troubleshooting. I will now take a clip, a lovely clip that I use for testing all the time, and drag it and drop it into my library, and you will see it shows up in sources. I will take another MP4 clip, which I believe is an H.264, and drop that in, and we can show you a couple of things. Now, here is the clip dropped into the library, ready to use in my dashboard. You notice there's an optimize button. It says H.264 files are not recommended. This is true, we know that. It will also tell you, if you drop in a ProRes file, that it's not recommended. And you will see, please convert to Photo JPEG. Photo JPEG is what would be considered the native for Millumin. Do not use it. Converting most files to Photo JPEG only makes them look worse. And there are not a lot of handles here, and this is really the kind of thing that the VJ or the lighting guy would use. It's not what the broadcast video guy uses. So you can look at Optimize to see what things it might tell you. You know, cleaning library, files are not used anymore. It might say you're not in 64-bit mode, and you could click that, and you could go to next, and you could then say, yes, we'll go to 64-bit mode if that shows up, but we'll turn those off because we are not going to convert to Photo JPEG, and we do not need to clean the library now. So most likely you're not using Optimize. That's what it's for, and stay away from Photo JPEG. Okay, so we have clips in our library, and I am now going to drag them into the dashboard. Make sure that you are copying your clips from the external drive that the producer gives you, and you're putting it on your media drive. Even though you can play off an internal system drive, that's never recommended, even with SSDs. That's why we supply external media drives. That drive may be in a system rack along with the audio interface and other things, or it may be a loose drive. It all depends on what you get, but make sure that you copy those files over to the external drive, and when you drop them into the interface, you drop them from the external media drive and not from the portable drive that the producer brought. Because what will happen if you use the wrong source and eject that drive is they will disappear from the interface, or disappear from various places, and you'll suddenly go, what happened to my playback? if things are in the right place, they will not disappear. You will be able to play back videos. However, there are ways you can turn off video accidentally. Right now, I'm going to show you here in this viewer, video playing. There's a zoom function here. I'm going to say zoom fit to workplace so I can see my whole 1920 1080 when I start playing. Two functions here in the dashboard. Fade to black. Okay, you notice when that's live, there's no video playing. I'll show you, but you can fade to black. And then layer visibility. You turn layer visibility off, and even though it looks like something's playing and you hear audio, you're not seeing it. Okay, so I have a clip that I dropped into the clipboard, into the dashboard. I click on the clip, it starts playing. If you click fade to black, it's still playing, but it faded to black. If you click layer visibility, it's still playing, but the layer is gone. Okay, when somebody says, well, I get audio, but I'm not seeing video, double check that you have not turned off or faded to black your layer. Now I'm going to press pause there so I don't have to listen to the music. Notice when I pressed pause, it in the time panel, it paused the playback. When I press stop in the dashboard, it stops and ends the playback. So I've started playback, clicked here into about the middle, and I pressed pause. Here is your countdown. In the gear, you can have no counter, or you can have time elapsed or time remaining. This is the only place you can get a countdown for counting out to stage managers. That's why you use the time panel. If you click and drag, nothing happens. But if you click once, it goes to the place in the clip. When you are rehearsing and they say go to 1 minute out, you'll go and you'll find about a minute like that. You'll click there and then you'll say, okay, ready. And you'll play back and you'll count it out. Go to 30 seconds. You'll find about 30. It is not an absolute, so you're just going to have to get the feel for where 10 seconds is, where 30 seconds is, where 1 minute is. And in rehearsal, you can be off a second. Nobody's going to know the difference as long as you're counting out the time correctly. So that's how you navigate around. No, there are not cue points as there are in other packages where you can click go to 10 or go to 60. It doesn't work that way. You'll have to get over it. All right. So notice in our 1920 1080 window, I have a 1280 720 clip. That's not going to work because that's not how we want it to play. What we are going to do is we are going to go into the layer parameters and into the scale parameter, which is where that lives. And I know it's 150% scaling required. I'm going to scale that up. Now that entire layer, any clip dropped in this layer is 150%. I take my next clip and I drop it in. It too is scaled up 150%. Now this particular clip happens to be very small, so 150 is not enough to make it full screen. Well, if I went and did that scaling here, now my 1280 720 clip is going to be scaled incorrectly. So what that means is I need another layer. So I'll click and add another layer. I'll go and label this layer, the first one that I had that's scaled at 150%, 720p. That will be my 720p layer. Now, this clip is in the wrong layer, which is fine. I'm going to click Edit Board. That is how you can delete clips. That is also how you can, through the gear, rename columns, like Q2. You'll see there that comes up. That is also how you will move columns left and right, or insert columns, or remove columns. I remove, okay, that column went away. Q2 column went away. So if I had that clip in the wrong column here, I would click Edit Board and then drag it up to my other layer, then turn Edit Board off. If you are trying to delete things and you click on things and it happens to disappear, like an entire layer disappears, like that, don't panic. Just Command Z and your layer will come back. Just make sure you undo before you do anything else. But as Douglas Adams would tell us all, don't panic. If you don't know who Douglas Adams is, look it up. Very humorous. Don't need to waste your time in a recording. So, I'm not going to label that layer yet, but what I am going to do is I am going to stop playback on all these clips. I'm going to click this clip and pause it. I am then going to go, and you see here you have controls, scaling and rotation, once again, for the layer. I'm going to click this and visually just figure out where this needs to be. Okay, that would be full screen. That's going to be good enough for me because I like round numbers. I'm just going to call that 275%. I think that'll work. I'm going to name this layer 275%. Now I know that I have that layer for clips at that size. So that's how you're going to build a show. Whatever layers you need for your layer scaling parameters, and you are going to then drop in subsequent columns every cue that you need in the layer it is, and that's how you're going to run a show. Pretty straightforward. Going to show you a couple more things on the individual media clips that you will usually want to know. We'll go back to our original clip here, press pause, stop this layer. Here we have our 720p layer, and now we have a media movie parameter. Looping, once and freeze. If you want it to freeze on the last frame, that's the choice you would make. You'll probably never use infinite unless you need to loop. Most clips will play once and stop. You can also auto follow, which is a lot like QLab. Auto follow will end one column and auto follow into the next. You won't use it much, but it can do it. Speed, you can change the pitch of the playback. You'll probably never need to do that, but that is per clip rather than per layer. Start and stop. This is where you enter in and out points. I will show you some tricks for that. But if you know that you have 30 seconds of dirty head and you want 1 second of pre-roll that happens to be black, you can then go click and say start at 29 seconds, and that's what it will do. I'll show you a couple tricks about coming up with start and end points. Same thing if there's if you have to get rid of black on and out or something like that, you can set out points. Those are per clip. Lastly, per clip functions, volume under audio. You've got really super loud, a really super loud clip. You can dial the volume back. You see output. Default output, I don't have any external device here other than, well, it's not going to show my AirPlay, but you're not going to set outputs here. What you're going to do is you're going to, in system preferences, you're going to go into sound and you're going to have an output. In this case, I could play out my living room Apple TV. If I had a Motu plugged in there, it would show Motu. You're going to set the output there, and then all of the audio is going to output through that interface, and it will show Motu or whatever here. If every clip that you're playing is way too hot, then you're going to go to the master volume on the audio interface, and you're going to take that down, and you'll work with front of house audio to get a good level that works for them. And then if you need to do further adjustments on one particularly loud clip, you could do that here at the clip level. Click on the clip, set the level there. And as you see, if I go to the other clip, it changes. The volume is set by clip, not by layer. Same thing here with your media movie parameters. I would set once stop or auto follow here. So that's an important thing to remember. Layer parameters versus media or clip-based parameters, and layer versus clip. Anything on this layer is affected by this layer parameter. Anything in an individual clip is set at the audio parameter and media movie parameter level. Okay, you're almost ready to do a show. The last thing that you're going to do is maybe you're going to need to do some fine-tuning of clips. Composition. Composition gives you more of what would be considered a traditional timeline in Final Cut Pro or something like that. These are advanced functions which you probably won't be using except to do one thing, and that is you can take a clip from your library, drop it in, drag it up to 0, and now you have a live scrubber. As you can see here, it's scrubbing live, and when you do that, you get a time. Now, of course, in what I consider ironic fashion, the composition gives you time in minutes, seconds, and frames, and the dashboard looks at said clips in minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Well, you're going to have to get over it. That's the way it is. As always, with these kind of frustrating little things, I make suggestions to the authors. I highly recommend, if you're doing a lot of playback, joining the forums and being active, because Philippe, who created the program, is very responsive to the needs of the users. So it's worth your time. So you can drag a clip in there. You'll notice that now there's a composition in your sources. If you were doing something complicated with multi-layers and compositions and a lot of clips and pip windows or God only knows what, excuse me, getting over a cold, you would build that composition here, and you could then take that composition and drop that composition in as a clip. You do not need to do that. And now I'm going to press pause, go into edit board, and delete that particular column, or not the column itself, but the composition out of the column. And that's what you would use compositions for. You can also, as you see, there are keyframes. I highly suggest that you dink around in this and see what you can do, because if you have to do custom fades to black or things, producer says, oh, we need to get rid of, as an example, I'll drop this in and go over, let's see, I'm not going to create a loop there. I'm going to click setup, and I'm going to change the composition duration so I can see the end. And producer says, oh, you need to get rid of this ad at the end. Okay, well, I could create a keyframe and add an opacity keyframe, and I could set that opacity to 0 here, and I could create a fade out, custom fade out. Of course, I could always just go in the dashboard and go to this clip, finding that time from wherever it is in the composition, and set that out point here rather than 427 and 638, and then I would have my custom out point. When you set in and out points, one thing you will find is in the optimize window, there'll come up a yellow, I believe. Well, actually, let's do it right now. If I was to set a custom out point here, it will say, or better yet, just set, if we start at 10 seconds in, it'll say, do not use start and end for movies to improve performances. It's written by a Frenchman. Some of the grammar is a little odd. Well, I asked him, you're always setting in and out points. Well, no, they're looping movies over and over in lighting world, so they don't use in and out points, and it's more efficient. Okay, fine. Don't worry about it. You're going to be using in and out points because we're doing broadcast video. We're not DJs or VJs. That's basically it. Obviously, I've gone through this very quickly. I've shown you a lot of stuff. Since it's on YouTube, go back and review. Look at your edit board functions and your gears, the things that you can do there. Look anywhere where there's a gear for things you can configure. In your library, you can create folders. I tend to do, that's one thing I forgot to show you, dashboards. Okay, create a new dashboard. I usually go and dashboard 2, rename the board. Okay, I might call this GS2. And then I have another dashboard, which I would rename for GS1. Okay, so now in my show file, I've got my dashboard with all my columns to play, and then play my next column. Okay. So there's my GS day 1. Then if I want to go to day 2, boom. Now I've got everything for day 2. That's the way I organize things. Additionally, I can create folders to keep media organized. So I can keep my day 1, my day 2 media, all of my old clips, whatever. When you get your revisions, you can, have another folder to keep that stuff so you can keep yourself organized and play the right stuff. Removing unused sources will remove videos from your library that aren't used in a dashboard. I wouldn't suggest it just because you may accidentally throw something away you thought you needed, but it's a way to clean things up if things get really crazy. Again, on compositions, play around with this if you want to. Keyframing, all kinds of stuff. If you're into editing, that's where the rubber meets the road there. Let's see. There are very few keyboard shortcuts. The one keyboard shortcut is Playback is the space bar. I'm here in my dashboard. I hit the space bar, my video plays. I hit the space bar, it goes to the next cue. I hit the space bar, it goes to the next cue, which does nothing. Also playing back, stop buttons here for each layer, as well as a pause for everything in the time panel, and then you saw how when I had multiple clips playing, we could pause in the time panel there as well and play individual clips. Notice that they are both playing at the same time because they were both selected and they're both stacked up. We're not playing columns, we were looking at individual clips. You'll have to get used to the difference between playing a cue in a column as opposed to clicking on a clip and working with it there and changing parameters. Other than that, you can turn off the tools. Let's see, I'm going to zoom a little bit smaller. Oops, how about a little bit bigger? No, a little bit smaller. Okay, you can turn off these tools. The Move To tool show extra controls. Notice when I click that, those controls go on and off. You don't have to leave them on there, but I leave them on there so I can see what's going on. Again, the crosshatch pattern is only because this is an expired trial version. If you see that, that is wrong. You should not see it. And I believe we have gone over all the basics. There is a lot more to this software, so don't worry that I haven't shown you a lot of things. This video is about 16:9 playback. Single screen, basic output. As always, go to EICs when on show site for help, or other video people who may have used the software, as well as grab me when you can, and I'm happy to help whenever possible. In all likelihood, I probably have forgotten something. Oh, there's, accidentally turn off your layer visibility, it goes away. I think I've covered just about everything. There's probably more. So I will sign off, and good luck, and have a good show.